There was nowhere to go but everywhere, so just keep rolling under the stars. Jack Kerouac, On the Road. Preparing for this trip had been the focus of my efforts over the last few months. You could say the adventure started back in early January. May 1st was the day when I embarked on the 50-day journey. As the countdown from weeks to days commenced, the reality of leaving flooded my thoughts, but was balanced by excitement and other distractions. I was battling the perfectionist in me, believing that everything had to line up just right. Accepting what is and what comes your way is part of the adventure, part of going with the flow. I was determined and committed to leave on May 1st. It was a date I picked, and it made for counting 50 days a bit easier. Last-minute preparations had continued literally to the last minute. Packing and organizing the bike, struggling to fit more than I needed, and then filtering through the stuff consumed my final hours at home. This was a great distraction from thinking about the reality of leaving home for 50 days. The bike was packed and ready. I was geared up and ready. It was time to go. I kissed Jeanette goodbye and she took some video and pictures. Everything was working fine on the motorcycle. As I pulled away from the house, I wasn't thinking about 50 days. I simply was happy to be on the bike. The wheels were turning. All my dreaming and planning resulted in the rubber meeting the road, literally. As the miles added up on that first day, I was putting distance between home and traveling fast to something new. I knew that I wanted to travel slowly, but it was like the ignition and launch of a rocket ship that needed to escape Earth's orbit. I blasted off and accepted that I was going to travel far and fast these first few days, to break through and start this new journey. About 10 hours on the road and a total of 585 miles. I traveled from Boca Raton, Florida to Troy, Alabama. Much of the day were highway miles, but also a few smaller back roads mixed in to make it exciting. I always remind myself that what you see along the interstate is not representative of the area. As this trip progressed, I was going to be diligent in seeking out back roads and towns away from the interstate. I wanted to get a taste of the real America. I knew those places were out there, cool towns and cities with their own personalities. I just wondered if it was getting harder to find. On these first few days, I would travel far and fast. You feel so connected. Now you're driving new heights. Every sense and dimension. Now you're on the highway, Transcendental highway. Colin Hay. There was a tremendous sense of freedom traveling by motorcycle. Each day I started out with an idea of a route. I had a sense of where I was going and what the opportunities were, but I had no firm destination or time of arrival. I stopped when the bike needed fuel, stopped when I needed to eat, and stopped when I was tired. Otherwise, I was kinetic. The bike was in motion and I just wanted to keep going. Traveling in the moment by motorcycle was a kind of freedom, a freedom to explore, to seek new destinations and new experiences. As I was having all these great feelings of freedom on the road, it was serendipitous that I'd be passing through Montgomery and Selma Alabama. I turned my attention to the history of the Civil Rights Movement and how hard people fought for basic freedoms and universal rights. Seeing the monuments and landmarks of the Civil Rights Movement, as well as riding over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, served to underline the importance of freedom, both from an historical context and of today. It was where voting rights marchers were confronted by police in 1965 in Selma, in an event that came to be known as Bloody Sunday. The Edmund Pettus Bridge is a place and symbol of the Civil Rights Movement. Yet it is so incredibly ironic and sad that the bridge was named Edmund Pettus in 1940, 3 decades after his death and many years after the Civil War. Edmund Pettus was a U.S. Senator, a decorated Confederate general, and a leader in the Alabama Ku Klux Klan. It's now more than 55 years since Bloody Sunday, and over 155 years since the end of the Civil War. The bridge has carried that name for over 80 years. The Edmund Pettus name belongs in a history book as a record of the past, not on a bridge. There are still miles to go. It's difficult to be sanguine about freedom and equality in America. Historically, the trajectory of progress, civil rights, and equality for all is positive, albeit slow. There is improvement and progress, but the disparity as I rode the small towns and back roads from Alabama through Mississippi was staggering. You saw it everywhere. As I rode through Alabama and Mississippi, it was clear that the civil rights movement and the fight for freedom was and is still a dream for many, possibly because of a lack of our collective imagination and consciousness. From a societal aspect, living in the world, there can be no freedom without equality. There's no denying that. Yet, as I rode further and faster, I reminded myself that freedom is a state of mind and the soul has no boundaries. It's about how you view each day with hope, open to the possibilities of change and choice. That's a big part of why I'm doing this trip. Freedom to defy convention, to follow a dream, to break out of what's expected, and to break through to something new. I was still traveling too fast. 1,500 plus miles in 3 days traveling through Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. Still traveling faster than I'd like, but I was excited to go west. I rode past my quota of Dollar General stores for this lifetime, so maybe I just needed to get to a place that had a unique personality. I passed through Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas, and then onward for a ride through Kachita National Forest. I felt the magnetic pull of the West. The deluge of rain and thunderstorms while I was heading to the Ozarks was pushing me west as well. The rain squalls and weather radar made turning west an easy decision. There was a stopover in Shawnee, Oklahoma for the night. I would be heading to New Mexico tomorrow. I had a strong desire to put the miles on and find a new rhythm to the trip. I knew it would be a few more days on the road before I would settle in and find that rhythm. There would be new surroundings and new energy on the horizon. A literal straight line east to west through the middle of the U.S. Most of my day was on I-40 going west. There were few bends in the road and straight was the direction. I stopped in Elk City, Oklahoma, where the Route 66 Museum resides. Elk City had the feel of a once thriving Route 66 town before the interstate was built. As I rode through the vast plains and prairie along I-40 and Route 66, I thought about those brave, crazy souls who crossed this terrain coming from the East Coast and heading to a new life out west. Wagon trains. So much history and pioneering spirit that built this country. The constant wind led me to think about the plight of those living on this route in the early 1900s and during the Great Depression. The Great Plow-Up, the worst man-made environmental disaster in the USA. It turned 5.2 million acres of native grassland into a great dust bowl in a decade or so of immense suffering. Now, about 100 years later, the science tells us that we're at the precipice of another environmental disaster of our own making, one that is global. Travel can be and should be an immersive experience. It informs. It is a truth-telling experience. It can't turn your head away or change the channel. You see it firsthand, you feel it firsthand, and there is a knowing that follows. There is an awareness of the world that comes, and most importantly, of one's being and place in creation. I was energized and excited to continue the journey and to see more, to experience more, and to feel immersed in the natural beauty of my surroundings. Tomorrow I would get to Santa Fe and would begin a new phase of the trip. It was a big milestone to have reached New Mexico. It was a gateway to the next level of my experience on this journey, and I was ready to take it all in. Hey there, fellow travelers. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for coming along on the journey. I'll be posting new episodes pretty regularly, so if you're interested in following along, then I'd be really grateful if you did that YouTube thing. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell down below, and you'll be informed when new stuff is uploaded. If you really like the video, then give it a big thumbs up and feel free to leave a cool comment as well. Thanks for traveling along. We'll see you on the road next time soon on the channel.